pay for the water smuggled from Egypt. One quote summarizes what Israel is doing with this water access in the West Bank, and then I'll go back to Gaza. Fatima al-Nawaja, a resident of Susia, a village in the south in Hebron, says to Amnesty, quote, "Water is life. Without water we cannot live. Not us, not the animals or the plants. Before, we had some water, but after the army destroyed everything, we have to bring water from far away. It's very difficult and expensive. They make our life very difficult to make us leave." Precisely, to make us leave. Some families in those rural areas are spending 20 to 25%, according to a report by UNICEF, 20 to 25% of their income to buy drinking water. Just imagine. But something much more serious than what's happening in the West Bank is happening in Gaza. This contamination issue, which I said I would go back to, is extremely important. By intentionally destroying the sewage treatment plants, the water facilities, by completely denying Gazans fresh water, because Israel shares with Gaza the coastal aquifer and pumps out most of its water, leaving Gazans with very little, it has led to the nitrate levels to rise way beyond the maximum allowed by the World Health Organization. And what does this mean? When the nitrates go so high up, they lead to a certain blood disorder, which is very new even for Palestinians under occupation. We've never seen this before. Amnesty International has called it the blue baby syndrome. And what this is due to the high level of nitrates in the water system, it causes a disorder called methemoglobinemia. Methemoglobinemia is a disorder where it causes blueness around the hands, the feet, and mouth of babies, newborn babies. Sometimes the baby is born completely, entirely lavender in color, shortage of breath, sometimes convulsions, and eventually death for some percentage of those babies. This is a syndrome that we've not seen before, even by Israeli standards. This crossed every single red line that Israel previously had had. So we're not dealing with occupation, colonization, and apartheid only. We're dealing with slow death. Gaza has been turned into a modern-day concentration camp. With no gas chambers, you will not see gas chambers in Gaza because that can't happen in the 21st century, but it is slow death nonetheless. But let's see what some Israeli soldiers have said about the war in Gaza. Lest I be accused of being one-sided, let's see what some Israelis are saying. Israeli soldiers gave some testimonies which were published in Haaretz and other Israeli newspapers, so now we have the public record of some. Tip of the iceberg. One soldier in his testimony said, from above, from the command, they said that shooting randomly in certain apartment buildings was permissible because anyone who remained in the sector and inside Gaza City was in effect condemned a terrorist because they hadn't fled. Another one talked about one of our officers, a company commander, saw someone coming on some road, a woman, an old woman. She was walking along pretty far away, but close enough so you could take someone out. If she was suspicious, not suspicious, I don't know, the soldier said. In the end, the commander sent people up to the roof to take her out with their weapons, and so they did. So the interviewer asked the soldier, I don't understand, why did he shoot her? I mean, he identified her as an old woman. So the soldier says, quote, that's what is so nice, supposedly, about Gaza. You see a person on a road, walking along a path. He doesn't have to be with a weapon. You don't have to identify him with anything, and you can just shoot him. End of quote. Gideon Levy, the famous Israeli journalist who writes for Haaretz, one of the leading papers in Israel, tries to understand what has happened there to cause this callousness, to cause this total apathy to the value of human life. He says, to do this type of criminality, without any unnecessary moral qualms, we have trained our soldiers to think that the lives and property of Palestinians have no value whatsoever. It is part of a process of dehumanization that has endured for dozens of years, the fruits of the occupation. In fact, it is not just the occupation. The Palestinian Civil Society BDS call that came out in 2005 addresses the three basic injustices that the Palestinians have faced for 61 years now. It is not just occupation colonization, which has lasted 42 years so far. It is also the system of racial discrimination within Israel. There's an institutionalized, legalized system of discrimination within Israel, which by any UN standard should be called apartheid because it is apartheid. Apartheid is not a South African phenomenon only. Yes, it was most prominent in South Africa, but the UN has defined the crime of apartheid. So now we have a UN convention that defines what qualifies as apartheid. And Israel certainly qualifies as an apartheid state according to UN standards. The third and most important of Israel's injustices and forms of oppression against the Palestinians is the denial of the refugees, their right to return to their homes of origin according to UN Resolution 194, and to reparations, of course. This is the key to the question of Palestine. Why is that? Because their injustice, they've endured this injustice for 61 years, and because the majority of the Palestinians happen to be refugees who were expelled in the ethnic cleansing of Palestine in 1948. So they remain the key component of the people of Palestine. You end occupation tomorrow without addressing the question of refugees, you do not solve the question of Palestine. You don't bring about justice or peace to the region. The right to self-determination is first and foremost the right of return for the refugees. The BDS call came out because the international community, the governments of the world, the UN, controlled by the US, has failed miserably in ending Israel's impunity or holding Israel to account to international law. We're not asking for different standards of judgment on Israel. We're asking Israel to be taken off the pedestal it has been put on by Western governments like yours, to be treated like everybody else, like all nations on earth committing grave violations of human rights and international law. It should be treated like every other country on earth according to the same standard. It is not being treated. It is singled out in getting the red carpet treatment and the honorary membership in the club of democratic nations while it's an apartheid colonial state. This is what's wrong with that picture. Tom mentioned the academic boycott. And I'll digress here for a bit because I'm talking about BDS in general. But part of BDS is academic, cultural, sports, economic, trade boycott, and so on. Academic is certainly the most difficult of all. We understand that fully. And it's probably the very last to be implemented. We understand that too. So it was in South Africa. It wasn't easy either. But, just to remind you, in the South African case, as far back as 1980, the Association of University Teachers, one of the two predecessors of the current University College Union, UCU, passed a resolution boycotting every single South African university and every single South African academic, not just university. All academics. It was a total blanket boycott of every South African academic person or institution. And they defended that, saying that even though that boycott would infringe the academic freedom of some progressive white academics, it is worth it to achieve the bigger good of freedom and liberation for the South African majorities. The Palestinian call for boycott, academic culture boycott, does not go that far. We do not call for a blanket boycott against Israeli academic institutions and individuals. It's an institutional boycott. And why is that? Some people have asked in various lectures. Is it because Israeli academics are at the forefront of the fight against the occupation, as many Zionist media have claimed? Absolutely not. They're as nasty as any other sector in Israeli society, if not nastier. The reason why we're not calling for boycotting individuals is because it will involve a certain level of McCarthyism, which we're not interested in. We don't do political tests. We're not interested in that. We're interested in boycotting the institutions as a whole, because they are very complicit in the occupation, in apartheid, and in racial discrimination. If that will cause a certain price to be paid by academics, let it be, because they are part of that system. And there is no pure boycott. There is no on earth pure boycott. Every boycott of anything will hurt innocence. There's always a price to be paid. We should try as much as possible to nuance the boycott in order to hurt innocence as the least possible hurt. But you can never make it zero. An economic boycott